Hello and welcome to another Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig, joined as always by Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
Going pretty good, Craig. I am excited because we got actually some new music in the last week or two by certainly a couple bands I'm excited about. We got some new Deafheaven, new Scowl song. Both of them have new albums coming out. It's a good time. I'm ready to start getting into new music. But
you got to be losing your mind because you historically, for anybody who's listened to a lot of episodes, knows you don't like singles. You don't like the drip, drip, drip of song. You want to hear the full album, the way it was written, the way it was presented as a full record.
I do, and a lot of times I will usually I'll listen to the advanced singles like once, maybe twice, but I try not to listen to them too much. But I will admit, I've probably listened to the new Deafheaven song
You wish.
probably like 10 times.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm with you. I've listened to that one, yeah, at least 5 or 6 times, and I'll keep listening to it. It hasn't been to the level of when Pearl Jam released a couple of songs last year, and I just had the one song on repeat over and over again for like an hour. I haven't studied it to that depth. But yeah, let's go there first. We've got a grab bag of topics today, including the Pitchfork Fest, Morgan Wallen, you said Scowl. But let's hyper analyze one song to a degree that makes no sense whatsoever by Deafheaven.
Sure. So their first song, Magnolia, came out. Their album, Lonely People with Power. Is that
Sounds right?
Yeah. It's coming out in March, late March too, I believe. I think it's like maybe like the last week of March. But anyways, the first single was Magnolia, and we talked a little bit about this. I think that was last week, about us not knowing what it was going to be. And it is indeed a more of a metal sound from Deafheaven. But what's interesting is it's metal in the, like, I immediately, as soon as I heard the song, said, oh, this sounds like a New Bermuda song almost. Like, to me, it was going back to that sort of traditional metal sound that they pulled out for New Bermuda. And I've since seen plenty of other people make that same point. And then, like, it's always funny when you do that, because at first you're like, oh, yeah, I actually made a good point. But then, like, as you see, like, tons of people make that same point, you're like, oh, that probably was not that insightful. It was just painfully obvious to everybody. But what was interesting to me about the song is just how short it is. You know, it's what is it, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minute long Deafheaven song, which is so weird. And
it's
so
like
now
missing the second half. Yeah.
I said, I think that was my first reaction to you, was I said, it really feels like we're missing that second. But like, a lot of Deafheaven songs are structured where they'll start out like really heavy with the blast beats and in your face, aggressive. And then all of a sudden they like pull the brakes and it goes into these like winding, like, I always say it's the journey of listening to Deafheaven when they take you somewhere. And you don't get that with this song.
Like, they're not cliche, but frequently it kind of spreads out, and they'll find a groove, or they'll find some textures that melodically just do something different than kind of the more chunky rhythmic stuff. But this one is pretty straightforward rhythmic all the way through. There's some breakdowns and some different things going on, don't get me wrong, but it never quite hits. It never hits that shoegaze breath that Deafheaven has kind of come to be known for.
I saw a lot of people say like, oh, so now they're just a plain black metal band. Like,
for one
and
song.
like, you know, that's the thing. It's, you really can't judge it yet. You know, we don't know how long any of the other songs are. And if this is their change of pace for this album, that like they're going to just do an album full of short songs, so be it. Like, I'm just so in the tank for this band that I'm pretty much along for like whatever path they want to take. You know, I have certain types of Deafheaven songs that I prefer. There's certainly, like, if they wanted to just keep making versions of Ordinary Corrupt Human Love, like, I wouldn't hate it, I don't think. But what's cool about Deafheaven anyways is none of their albums sound alike anyways. Like, they've always gone in a different direction with their albums. And so I think we've just yet to see really what that direction is going to be with this one. But I'll tell you, like, I day one pre-ordered it. There's not very many bands that I will just sight unseen. I wouldn't be sight unseen. What would be sound unheard? Pre-order their album. You know, we're talking, this is like Pearl Jam, Deafheaven, now Foxing. Like, this is like rarefied air for me to just automatically pre-order an album, but I definitely did. Overall, though, I like the song quite a bit.
Well, let's
I'll
go
let
for a
you.
second though. Let's pretend that this whole record is a step back, a mistake. It's too facile. It's too simple. Let's pretend for a second that you and I are like, yeah, this was. You're still gonna jump on board for the next one. You're still gonna be interested. Like
Yeah.
even if they screwed up and they made a horrible record. In a lot of ways, I'm sure a lot of people feel that way about Infinite Granite. And in fact, when I play, I know you have this feature turned off on Spotify, but when I'm done listening to Magnolia, it starts playing another song that it thinks I want to listen to. And quite often it's trying to play Great Massive Color from Infinite Granite. And I'm like, no, that's not the mode I'm in. I'm listening to Magnolia, right. And it's the same band, but it's almost like a totally different band. So at the end of their career, will we look at Infinite Granite like the ultimate outlier, or are there tracks on this new record coming up that will recall Infinite Granite? Is this going to be the ultimate melding? Like, I can't wait to find out. And even if chances are from hearing Magnolia, I'm not going to hate this record. But let's say I do. Let's say this is the only song I kind of like and it's just meh, bland. It just blends into itself and there aren't enough dynamics to make it interesting. I'm still going to jump on board for the next one.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, Ohio State lost to Michigan and they still won the national championship. So
did they? I didn't hear about that. Did that happen?
Wait, did we talk about this yet? But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like, we know what this band is capable of, and again, as much as Infinite Granite may not be my favorite Deafheaven album, it certainly isn't bad. It finished in the top 10 of my favorite albums for that year. It actually finished in the top 5. I liked that album. It just didn't have the longevity that their other albums had with me. I kind of got to the point where I was like, yeah, if I want to listen to Deafheaven, let me grab Sunbather, Ordinary Corrupt Human Love, even New
Well, and that's
New
the
Bermuda.
thing. And you and I talked about that. It's not a bad record, but it's also not within the confines of their brand, of what we think about. When you think of Deafheaven, you think of this, and this, and then you think of Infinite Granite. And if with a band with as many bands as you and I love, and with a band with as many records as they have, you're not going to pull up Infinite Granite first very often. That's all.
Yeah, and that's fine. But I would just be shocked if I hated this album.
Me too.
Lonely People with Power. I fully expect I will love this album. Probably going to listen to it a ton. It will probably finish pretty high on my year-end list. I mean, that's just status quo for Deafheaven with both of us, really.
Yeah. So next on the topic list is something that you and I talk about frequently because we're very interested in the business of music and the live music scene. You and I are not Morgan Wallen people, but I'm on all kinds of mailing lists, and I happen to get pre-sale alerts from some of my clubs where I could buy pre-sale tickets because Morgan Wallen is going to play the Cleveland Browns Stadium, which is, who sponsors that now? It's not First Energy anymore.
I don't even know.
Huntington Field, right? Our good friends at Huntington Bank. Anyway, so I got the pre-sale message, and it's only notable because I was, you and I talk about the inflation on the price of Pearl Jam tickets and the 10 Club and the issues with that. If you're a Morgan Wallen fan, you are committed financially. Let me read off some of these prices. The field tickets, this is the official pre-sale. The field tickets, well, actually, let's start this way. The P3 bowl, I don't know what P3 stands for, but somewhere in the lower bowl, $8.75 per ticket. The P2 bowl, which I guess would be better, are $578.75. And if you want to be on the field, if you want to have a field seat, I assume there's seats and it's not a pit, but if you want a field seat, and presumably they're really good because this was a pre-sale, $728.75 each. So if you go with your girlfriend, your wife, both, whatever, you're in
Together,
yeah,
your wife and your girlfriend both it's an
you're
interesting
into it
trip.
for $1,500.
Yeah.
You're a family of four. You're damn near $3,000 before you buy your first beverage or T-shirt. Who's
Are those
spending
prices
$3,000 for four people to go to a Morgan Wallen concert?
are those prices including fees, do you know? Or are there fees
I
on top of that yet too?
I'm guessing because it's a pre-sale through the zone that I was in that there are no fees, but I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know what Taylor Swift was charging for the Eras tour, but I don't think they were those prices, were they? Like,
I don't know because all the chatter and all the articles that were written were about the secondary market, the resale market for
yeah.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, but the direct
Who
to
even
consumer
knows
market.
who even knows what the actual list value was on those tickets?
My brother got tickets like actually through the artist sale for his wife and my nieces, but I don't remember. I don't even know if I ever asked what he paid, so I'm not sure. We should ask Scott Sargent when we had him on the podcast.
For the Taylor Swift tickets, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, no, I think I've long realized that I am in a weird place where like I'm not keeping up with prices. Like, and yes, this applies to tours, but it really applies to almost everything. Like, I just find myself in a constant state of amazement with how much anything costs these days, where it's just like, God. And like, I find myself like not being willing to play along. So I just end up like not buying things or not going to things because I'm just like, I'm not paying that much for this stuff. Now, obviously, I'm not paying $1 to go to what's his name?
Morgan Wallen.
Morgan Wallen. I'm not paying $1 to go to a Morgan Wallen show, but but like if they're setting these prices, I mean we've talked about this ad nauseum with like the Pearl Jam stuff. Like if they're setting these prices, people are paying them, and
Yeah, they're selling out.
they're not overpriced if people are buying them. You
Well,
can
and
say they're
guess what?
overpriced,
And guess
but
what's
they're
going to
not.
sell out? Morgan Wallen at
Yeah, that's what I'm
Huntington Cleveland
saying.
Brown Stadium.
Yeah. So you
That guy
can't say
just
they're overpriced. That's what the market is bearing. Like if they were overpriced, nobody would be buying them.
yeah, that's absolutely true.
So we may not totally understand it, but it was certainly like eye-opening to see those prices. But I guess that's just the world we live in now.
When it really puts music festivals in perspective.
Yeah.
I got myself a VIP ticket to the Innings Festival this year, and there are fewer bands than ever, which goes to show what we're going to talk about. And I don't remember exactly after all the fees what the final price was, but it was give or take $800 for one ticket. But I'm
Is
going to
that for the
see
whole festival?
for that's 2 days. So I'm going to see
Okay.
Incubus. I'm going to see the Killers. I'm going to see Fall Out Boy. I'm going to see Boys to Men is there. I'm going to see Boys to Men. And
Didn't
all these,
you?
Jack's Mannequin. I'm excited to see Jack's Mannequin, the lead singer of Something Corporate, his other band. But like for $800, I get 2 days, all I can drink too, by the way. That's
Oh,
beer
okay.
and wine and seltzer included. And
Yeah.
I get to see all those bands versus I could spend $728 for a single ticket to see Morgan Wallen at a football stadium.
I looked at Sonic Temple here in Columbus because
And that
Deafheaven
one's
is
4
playing
days.
it's 4 days, but I just looked at the Friday show, which is Deafheaven is playing. Metallica is the headliner that day. They're one of their two sets they're playing. And if you just got just the ticket, so no concessions, no VIP, just the ticket, it was like $200. But like that seems like a steal when you compare to just the price to go see Morgan Wallen. Like that seems like an absolute steal. But didn't you say you were done with the Innings Festival?
We didn't go last year. The headliner was Red Hot Chili Peppers, and then it was a game time decision this year. My friend and I have decided we've seen all the bands at this point, and I know that's overstating it, but we've essentially seen every bucket list band we ever wanted to see, and some way more than once. But we decided that if we could ever have a chance, we wanted to see the Killers live. And so
Okay.
then all of a sudden they announced the Killers, and so here we go. I'm crossing that one off the list. And like on a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a fan of the Killers am I? So maybe a 7, maybe 8 on
Okay.
a good day. I really love their top 5 songs,
Yeah.
but that's the stage of music fandom I'm in, where I'm crossing bands off the list. You know, they're the bands that
Sure.
I'm a super fan of, where I considered going back to Red Rocks to see Manchester Orchestra open up for Incubus. But then I was like, oh yeah, I'm seeing Incubus again at Innings Fest this year,
Yeah.
which is like the 5th time I think I'm seeing Incubus, 6th
Wow.
time. They just happen to open. They happen to be on every festival I go to. So
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I've seen them half a dozen times. But yeah, it's interesting. But that brings us to more festival news. I sent you an article this week. By the way, just in case anybody, if it seems like I'm over talking and Andrew's not getting a word in edgewise this week, I've had a manic week where my energy level is on 11 and I can't calm myself down. It's a happy manic, but I'm going crazy. I've been blowing up Andrew's chat all week long. It's hard to be friends with me, and a
Think
testament to Andrew.
I think that the listeners will be happy to not hear me speak the whole time. So take it away. I'm happy to let you steer this ship.
Yeah. So I sent Andrew an article from WBEZ out of Chicago about it was. So we've known since late 2024 that the Pitchfork Music Festival was no longer, but they did some additional reporting, and especially with the founder. The Pitchfork Music Festival, I'm going to read a little bit, was permanently shut down by its parent company Condé Nast in late 2024. The festival, which almost reached its 20th anniversary, had built a reputation as a curated event for music lovers seeking artists outside of the mainstream. Interesting thing, the reason why we're talking about it, it just didn't seem like this festival is financially viable anymore. They talked about the rising production costs, the artists, the headliner fees had jumped from around $20,000 in the early days to over $1 million today. And Condé Nast didn't really seem to understand the festival anymore. They were pushing for like Justin Bieber,
Yeah.
which is not exactly Pitchfork material when we're talking about
No.
the Pitchfork Fest.
I really like over the last couple of years. I mean, it has been a while since I've looked at a Pitchfork Fest lineup and even been remotely tempted. And like Chicago's not that far away. Like, so if it was a show or a festival that I really wanted to go to, I easily could go to. But they haven't even been tempting me lately. And I think some of this peek behind the curtain might explain some of the reasons why I haven't been super interested in it.
Yeah, and I think about, since I've really jumped in on the festivals over the last 10 years, I think about some of the bands that I keep seeing at festivals, and then I say, I'd love to see them play a headline set when they go on tour. And I'm thinking specifically of a band like Chevelle, and then they never go on tour. It's like they're essentially just a festival band now because they can show up. I'm sure they're not demanding $1 million, but let's say they get 150 or 200,000 and they do 4 or 5 festivals a year, then all of a sudden they're racking up $1 million. They only have to play 5 or 6 dates with a festival set of their most famous material. They don't have to play for 2 hours like a headliner would. They're playing for 70 minutes. Tight 70-minute festival set for big money without having to live on a bus.
It's the way to do it if you can do it.
Yeah. It's interesting to me. I understand why the bands would want that much money, but it's like, at what point, like they wouldn't do it for half that? You're telling me a headliner for Pitchfork Music Festival wouldn't show up for $500,000 or 300,000? Like one afternoon, 80, 90 minutes, you're not going to show up for 300,000? I don't want to call musicians greedy, but maybe I want to call some of these headliners greedy.
Yeah. It's just funny to me because I can't help but contrast that with like a hardcore show where you might have like 6 bands playing and it's $20 to get into this tiny 100-person room, and you just wonder like how much money could they possibly be making, and then you contrast that with this. It's like just a totally different ballpark. It's almost like they're in two different industries entirely.
Yeah. But you mentioned Sonic Temple, and I'm looking at the website right now. It's 88% sold out for 2025, 4 days. The biggest headliners are Korn, Metallica, Linkin Park, and as you said, Metallica again. They're
Doing
playing two unique
two.
sets, no repeats.
That's right. So that if you want to see them, you might as well go both nights and see them both. Alice in Chains is going to be there. The Sunday show, they're playing right before Metallica, and I suspect like there's a part
And
of me that
Chevelle's playing before them.
there's a part of me that wishes there's a part of me that kind of wants to go to that, just because I feel like with Alice in Chains and Metallica, they're very close friends, those bands, and I feel like we could have some like interesting songs played and maybe some appearances in each other's sets that could be cool. But I like the Sonic Temple is such a long day, and I just don't know if I like enough of the bands to want to do that. But
When you're paying so much money, you don't want to show up late.
exactly, you
When
want
we go
to.
to the Innings Festival, I'm known as the guy who's there like right when the gates open. And
Yeah.
my friends kind of roll in when they roll in, and I find them later because we're old men and we buy the VIP tickets. But everybody knows, like, get out of my way. I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna check out the band playing at noon in the bright sunshine, and then
Yeah.
I'll still be there at 10:30, 10:45 when it shuts down for the night. But yeah, Friday night is the night for Sonic Temple because that's
Yes.
Deafheaven, Acid Bath, and I've got to be one of the top Acid Bath fans in the world at this point, and I'm
But
not
yeah,
going.
you are a 0.1%er for sure.
I just can't. I can't bring myself to do it. Like
Yeah.
all the travel and the expense and everything else, and then part of it for me these days is not knowing what the scenario is going to be like. That first time you ever go to a festival, it's really hard to rip the band-aid off because I always like to be really well prepared, and if I don't know the scenario I'm going into, it's very uneasy for me. Some people can just roll into a new situation with no problem whatsoever. That's not me.
The scenario at Sonic Temple is hot and sweaty. That is the scenario. But yeah, that Friday night show, like I know Mastodon is playing. I want to say Converge. I think Converge is playing on Friday. Like,
They are.
there's some good bands
Cannibal
on that
Corpse,
Friday.
Hatebreed.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to Hatebreed in a long time.
I'm not a big Hatebreed guy myself, but
I loved one of their albums back in either the late 90s or early 2000s. It was one of those I bought at the used record store, and I was like, when your expectations are used record store level, you can really enjoy something a lot more, I think.
yeah. Well, I think like Hatebreed is a band that's like revered in the hardcore scene. So that's like one of those bands that I feel like I'm supposed to really love, but I just don't. But look, again, festival. If I were to see them at a festival, I could sit through a Hatebreed show at a festival, but like less so Cannibal Corpse. Cannibal Corpse does absolutely nothing for me.
I think they're funny.
Yeah.
Like, not Cannibal Corpse, what's the one with, oh, rest in peace, Odorous Urungus, Guar. Guar is another one. Like, I've accidentally seen Guar 2 or 3 times because they've been at festivals, and it's just a goof. And to some degree, I think Cannibal Corpse is a bit of a goof. Although, I think I shared this with you before. Following George Corpse Grinder, or whatever his name is, the lead singer of Cannibal Corpse on Instagram is really fun because he's gotten really good at winning claw machines. And so as they're touring around the country, he plays claw machines and he wins prizes and he gives them to kids with cancer. So that's his whole thing is he because he's got a penchant for winning on the claw machines, he's turned it into donations for cancer kids.
That's legit pretty cool.
I know. Who would expect that from the lead singer of Cannibal Corpse?
Yeah, for sure.
Who goes by Corpse Grinder.
For sure.
All right, why don't you talk about Scowl, and then we'll talk about the streaming music market.
Yeah, sure. So Scowl, hardcore band out of California, they put out their debut album 2 or 3 years ago, Where Flowers Grow, or How Flowers Grow, excuse me. A really interesting hardcore band. So like that album was pretty much straightforward hardcore, except for like the last song had like sort of like some weird vibes going on, and their lead singer Kat Moss, she sang an actual like a normal singing voice, and she was really good, and it was like, oh wow, okay, this is different. Well, they put out an EP last year, 2 years ago, that was starting to trend a little bit more in that direction. Now they finally have their follow-up full-length album coming out in April. It's like 1 week after Deafheaven, which is unfortunate for me. I hate when I have like two bands that I really love going one after the other. But Are We All Angels is the name of the album. They put out two singles. The most recent one, Not Heaven, Not Hell, and they are a continuation of this move into like I would still identify it to some degree as hardcore, but like these are songs where she's Kat Moss is like properly singing now on all these songs, and she is excellent. And what's interesting to me about this is, and the reason I wanted to talk about this a bit is because there's a little bit of a weird thing with this band because so Taco Bell started this thing a few years ago where they started sponsoring hardcore bands. They've done stuff with Turnstile. They did stuff with Scowl. They've done stuff with Military Gun. They're trying to connect with these bands, which I personally think is a pretty cool like promotion. Like rather than going with like the cheesiest butt rock thing you can find to do your promotions, like actually like going out there and like trying to find bands that like are interesting, new, young, vibrant, bringing some kind of energy to a scene that is growing. I think it's cool myself. However, while Turnstile doesn't seem to get much backlash for it, Military Gun, I've seen no backlash for it. Scowl has received a ton of backlash for the Taco Bell commercial. And as soon as they announced their new album, I started looking at comment sections on YouTube and Stereo Gum and like Reddit, and like every other comment is just ripping on them for Taco Bell. And I sort of get it on one hand because when I was a kid, I felt that way too. And when I say kid, I even mean like in my 20s. I was still the guy, you can't sell out. There's no sellout in punk music, right? And as I've gotten older and I realize like this musical landscape we're in, like if Taco Bell wants to give these bands money, let Taco Bell give these bands money. We want these kind of bands to be making a living making music. So I am all for these bands getting paid so they can continue to make music. I don't like we like when Foxing put out their new album, there was so much press talking about like them figuring out their place as this band that like half their lives they're at home in St. Louis working jobs, and then all of a sudden like they put out an album and they become rock stars for a couple months and they go on tour, and then it's like right back to your job. And like I'm quite sure like Scowl is in very much the same position. I'm sure they are not big enough to be just making music as like their only thing, but like I want that for them. I want that for these bands. Like I want Military Gun to be able to make a living as a band. So the criticism just rubs me the wrong way. And I think the other thing that happens is like there has been from day one with Scowl allegations of like, oh, Kat Moss is a plant, an industry plant. And she sort of gets that because, she's a very good looking girl. And people, and she was singing this aggressive hardcore screamo style, and people think that a girl that looks like that can't be making that kind of music. But I'm telling you, like I've seen interviews with her. She was on the Hard Lord podcast. Like she's the real deal. She's legit. She's in this scene. This is her kind of music. And I don't know. Like, she doesn't need me on this podcast that hardly anybody listens to defend her. But I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that because it was really rubbing me the wrong way seeing everybody talk about this Taco Bell. Who cares? Like, make your money.
But I think it's important because there's no equity in being poor. We should really, like, literally and figuratively, everybody has an origin story, but at a certain point, if somebody proves that they're really good at what they're doing in terms of making music, whether it's Foxing or Cat or Scowl, this band, you should root for them to achieve something north of subsistence from their art so that they can continue to make that art. They've earned that. And you'd like to think that they've earned that and that they could get that when they achieve a certain level of success. Now, did it get out of control in the 80s and 90s where a record deal was like winning the lottery? Yeah, it probably did. But now the pendulum's gone too far back the other way, where some of the most beloved artists that we listen to, who have millions and millions of streams and their videos are watched nonstop on YouTube, they can't quit their day jobs. They have to work construction. They work in the coffee shops. They do these things because music doesn't pay enough of the bills. And the older they get, the more established they get in their family lives and everything else, the less likely it is that they're going to be able to continue to make music to the frequency and degree that we should all want them to do, because we're fans of what they make. We're fans of what they make. But they're, especially in hardcore and punk and metal to a lesser degree, there's a somewhat false connection between being in a shit situation and being able to make that music. And so there's this idea that unless you're living in squalor, unless you're having trouble rubbing two nickels together, you can't be authentic to the art form. And it's bullshit. And and you and I are old enough to know better. And they do need us to be out here defending them, because these younger people used to be us.
Yep.
But now we know better, because we got 20 years under the belt of struggling to pay mortgages, to pay for our insurance, to do all the adulting that we're seeing these artists have to do as they exit their 20s, they enter their 30s, and God forbid they want to have families. So take the Taco Bell money and keep making the art wherever it takes you. And anybody calling sellout doesn't understand the market that we live in.
Yeah, I like the way I look at it is, I just think about my own personal time, like when I work my job and I get home, like to have the energy to still pour myself, every ounce of myself creatively into a project and make an album would just seem like such a daunting task when you combine it with everything else going on in my life. And so, if getting some money from Taco Bell makes that a little bit easier, like, so
dude, it's a tale as old as time. Everybody who's ever been in a local band, I had a band. You know what ends bands? That first kid. Because now you've got responsibilities, you've got time constraints, you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we should, and it's not like Taco Bell made them all multimillionaires.
Well, that's the thing too.
They probably bought them 6 months to make a record.
Exactly. Like, I can't imagine that this was a lucrative partnership. And I don't know. In terms of like a product you're going to support, like, why not Taco Bell? Like, to me, like, Taco Bell is a pretty fitting product in the hardcore world.
Would it have been okay if it was PBR, Yeah. Like, come on.
Yeah. But like so many times, like if you leave a show and you're going home, like Taco Bell is open, you swing through and get some Taco Bell. Like, it makes sense. Like, it's not
maybe if it was a chain of check cashing places, payday lenders, maybe that's not okay. But like, it's Taco Bell, nobody has to go there. It's harmless. Now, what if she was a vegan and it was Taco Bell? Like, would that have been problematic?
Is Taco Bell vegan? Like, does their meat count as animal meat? I don't know.
It does. Yes, it does.
Okay. Oh. But yeah, anyways, that's it. Just check out their album, Are We All Angels? Comes out first week of April, like I said. I think a lot of people, you don't have to be into hardcore, I think, to like some of what they do or what they're doing, at least the direction that we've heard in recent years. I think there's some meat on the bone for everybody with their
It's
music.
good.
So
It's a good song.
yeah.
And I'm looking forward to hearing that album. I'm looking forward to hearing any album
Yeah,
in its
right.
entirety. Has there
Right.
been anything of note that's been released in its entirety so far this year?
Did the National put out an album? I feel like they might have put out
I
an
don't know.
album, or was it just a single?
I think I would have heard of, I would think I would have listened to it.
I don't know how it's pronounced, but that artist that everybody really likes, FKA Twigs, put out a album. I know. I saw Pitchfork reviewed it.
So the National put out an album, but it's 2024. It was December 13th. So I should listen to that. I haven't listened to it, but it's live. It's a live record.
Okay. Okay. Uh,
Which is a perfect release in December, by the way.
yeah. Yeah. But that's there's been a couple albums I tried listening to that, either Pitchfork or Stereo Gum have maybe mentioned, and I checked it out, but just nothing. What was the album I sent you that I thought I was going to like for the first song or two? And I was like, here, Craig, new music. And then I rescinded it halfway through.
It's perfect that you don't remember the name of it.
It's driving me nuts. It's right on the tip of my Benjamin Booker. And, it just didn't capture me. And so I'm still waiting for that first album that I can really latch onto this year. So
No, I'm with you on that one.
I do have a couple February things that I'm interested in. Church Tongue, Pure Noise just signed them. They've got an EP coming out February 4th. And then this band Abdomen has one February 1st coming out. So I actually have some February stuff I'm looking forward to.
So while I was scrolling through our feed, I was reminded of another topic that I'd love to bring up and ask you about. So one of the announcements this week was that Manchester Orchestra was added to the Incubus tour, and I was looking at some tickets. I was thinking about going to one of the shows. But I'm also I am a man who still frequents Facebook because I'm in my 40s and I'm a suburban male in my 40s, so I'm on Facebook. And one of the Manchester Orchestra fan groups, there were a couple. It wasn't like a full on backlash, but there were some people had some questions, and they were curious if anybody else found it to be an odd pairing to have Manchester Orchestra opening up for Incubus. Like, do these two bands really line up? And while I can see that like the eras don't line up, obviously Incubus predates Manchester Orchestra pretty substantially, but to me, I think if they had come out in the same time period, they easily could have been on the same tour. They could have shared a stage. And so it's kind of cool that two different eras, it's melodic rock to / hard rock. It kind of fits, right?
I think if you stopped listening to Incubus with Make Yourself, you might feel this way, that the bands don't make sense together. So if like you just had Fungus Among, is that what it is? Fungus Among Us, Science, and Make Yourself, you might
especially
say
Science.
Yeah, you might say, okay, that's a weird fit of those two. But if you stayed through Morning View and After, it's a perfect fit. Like, are you kidding me? Like Incubus, like Morning View, like if you like Manchester Orchestra, I feel like you would like Morning View. Like to me,
Same
those
with what is it? A crow
a crow
left
left
to the
of
murder.
the murder. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like those albums, like I see no disjointed fit there whatsoever between those. To me, those
See,
fit
I'm with
perfectly.
you.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering. But you and I were old enough to be there for Incubus. If we had not been there when Incubus came out, and we'd grown up later, and Manchester Orchestra was our Incubus. So, like, if Incubus, who would be the equivalent from the 1980s? Or early 90s that Incubus were to go play with that would like really throw us off.
Gosh,
I'm
I don't
really
even
putting you
know.
on the spot there.
I really don't know. Goo Goo Dolls.
Interesting.
Maybe if you like went back to like just the first couple Goo Goo Dolls. I don't know. Like
I'm trying to figure it out.
That's the best that's the best I've got. Because Goo Goo Dolls was early 90s, right? Their first album was early 90s.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it was like 92, 93, something
But
like
they
that.
really didn't break. I mean, because they had Superstar Car Wash where they were still opening for Soul Asylum when I first saw them. But then they
Yeah.
really broke big in the mid 90s, almost about the same time as Incubus, right?
I feel in my brain's chronological order, I have Goo Goo Dolls quite a bit before Incubus. Like, because I was listening to Goo Goo Dolls in high school, and I didn't listen to Incubus until college. But to be fair, I didn't start listening to Incubus until Make Yourself. So like then I went backwards. Then I went backwards for them. So
I was in
maybe
on Science.
so my timeline is a little bit skewed because Science would have been like what, 97 probably.
Yeah, 96, 97, somewhere around there. All right.
Yeah.
So, as you
Make
know,
Yourself was definitely like 99, probably 99, because that was I was in college at that point. It was definitely 99. It was my
as you
freshman
know,
year
I
of college.
really love ChatGPT for these kinds of things.
Okay.
So I asked while we were talking, and I said, if Manchester Orchestra is to Incubus, then Incubus is to somebody from the early 90s or late 80s. And it suggested maybe Jane's Addiction, maybe Faith No More, maybe the Red Hot
That's
Chili
interesting,
Peppers, or maybe the Police. Imagine Incubus opening for the Police.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anybody
don't
opening
see
for the Police, but
I don't necessarily see the Jane's Addiction or
I don't
Red
either.
Hot Chili Peppers. The Faith No More one is kind of interesting though.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's a good match. I think it's a really great opportunity for Manchester Orchestra actually to expand their audience to those crusty older guys who didn't keep listening to new music after Incubus.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So is Incubus playing Morning View in its entirety?
Plus some other hits.
Because I know they just did the remake or whatever. So
yep, that's what they're doing.
That's pretty cool.
And for Manchester Orchestra, they get to play Red Rocks 2 years in a row.
That's actually pretty awesome. And I kind of wish I could see Incubus play that album. I love Morning View so much.
Well, we can go to Nashville or Toronto unless they announce something in Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio doesn't exist for tours anymore.
It really doesn't. It's the those ticket taxes and everything else.
Yep.
So
yep, except for Morgan Wallen. Morgan Wallen coming to Ohio.
I mean, when you can charge $728.75 for a field seat, it doesn't matter what the ticket excise tax is.
Yeah.
All right. The last topic of the day is one that
Second to last. I got one more thing, but I want to do it at the end.
All right. The penultimate topic of the day is one that I got really fired up about, and I actually wrote something for the album of record about the streaming thing, because you and I talk about this a lot, how Spotify is in the crosshairs because their quote unquote per stream rate is lower than Apple Music, is lower than this one, lower than that one. And we all know why, because Spotify has an ad supported quote unquote free tier, and the monetization of that tier is not as good as what happens on the paid tier. So when you and I pay for our subscriptions, that contributes a higher amount of money to the payout to the artist. But these streaming services don't actually pay per stream at all. It's a post facto calculation. So when Spotify pays, they pay 70, they're contractually obligated to pay 70% of their music revenue. So the ad revenue they get from music and the subscription money they get from music, they have to pay 70 cents on the dollar off the top. They work with the 30%. They pay Joe Rogan out of the 30%. They do their advertising, their marketing, and they run the company. They pay all their employees out of that 30%. Like that's the plan. And so I did.
Yeah. Plus all the advertising dollars, both on the podcast side and on the free tier, that money is separated. That 70% is of the revenue they make from their paid tiers, to be clear.
And from the ads.
No, I don't think so.
Well, then why would their per stream money be different than Apple's?
What do you mean? Because they're not getting anything from that, but those are still streams that count. So that's dragging the value down because they're not getting any money from those streams.
I disagree. They're paying 70% of the advertising money too, I believe. But this is part of
I know it's not clear how when it's worded, but on their website it says that it's of the paid tier. They pay 70% of the paid tier money to the rights holders. And it's actually two series of payments. It's to the rights holders for the this is where music is like weird. It's one is the right holders for the licensing, and one is the right holder for the like songwriter. And
Songwriting.
so there's like two different, the music production and the songwriting side of it. So there's like two rounds that come out of that 70%.
Right.
But I just wanted to clarify that it's the 30%. Yes, that does go to their operating expenses and show recording, but so does the money they make from selling advertising on the podcasting side. And I'm pretty sure the advertising money from the free tier goes to them as well.
It's not possible because as a songwriter, as a performer, you have to be paid off of that advertising money on the music, not on the podcast. So the reason why they've invested in audiobooks and podcasts is so they can sequester all that money and they don't have to pay the 70%.
Right. Correct. We definitely agree on that.
But the point is, I understand why people aim at Spotify. I understand why it's problematic, and I'm totally with the artists that we need to continue to work to try and find ways to get that money up. And more paid subscribers means more and more money to the artists, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think that's a good math equation.
Correct.
But everything that I've ever been able to find about, well, okay, what percentage does Apple Music pay? Is that they only pay 52%. And so, yeah, their per stream numbers look higher than Spotify's, but that's not what we should be looking at. If they're only paying 52% and Spotify's paying 70%, why does Apple get to make more money off of the music per dollar than the biggest competitor in the industry? And shouldn't Apple Music be matching their 70% and paying rights holders what they're worth per dollar made like Spotify does?
See, this is where I think it's a product of the free tier. I think because there's a section that's cordoned off from that, I think that when they negotiated with Spotify, the labels said, hey, we need a higher percentage because we're not getting anything from this free tier. So we need to get 70% of these paid tier. Whereas with Apple, everything is paid. You cannot listen to music unless you pay on Apple Music. And so I think that that's probably why they negotiated a lower percentage on that deal. But it does affect like the way the numbers look from a per stream, then look radically different between the two entities. And that's where you're absolutely right that this is not an apples to apples comparison. These are two different business models. And so it makes zero sense to make that comparison, to try to compare a per stream dollar value to the artist. It just doesn't, to me, that just doesn't make any sense.
I guess at the end of it, a lot of this jousting is immaterial, because what really matters to me is, of all the companies in the universe, Apple is the one that needs to make actual money off of the music the least. And the fact that they control the device, they sell the vast majority of the devices. They've got the services fees. They're charging you for data for your photos and all these kinds of things. Music is just like gravy on top, and they're collecting a higher percentage off of music than they do from apps in the App Store when they sell your app for you.
And don't forget, a lot of Apple Music users are bundling it and as part of the whatever it's called, the Apple One. And so they are actually getting a reduced rate. So they're paying less money into that music bucket that then is getting split at a better rate for Apple than it is for the other ones. Like, I'm with you, like morally and spiritually, like I'm totally with you. Like I want more money going to these artists, and I think it should be higher than 52%. Absolutely. The only reason I was pushing back was just because I think I see why they negotiated different rates for the two services. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think just a big part of why artists have such a problem with Spotify is still the free tier. So many people listen to music on Spotify and don't pay for it.
Let's talk about that though.
I just will say, like again, spiritually and morally, like I do have a problem with that. I do not like Spotify's free tier. I think if they wanted to have like a $5 a month tier at a lower quality or whatever, like that would be one thing. But like, and then like I've said a million times, charge me $25 a month. I will pay $30 a month for a higher quality stream. I am happy to pay that money. I get so much value out of Spotify. Like I don't pay anywhere near what I should be paying Spotify to
Well,
listen
you and
to
I
all this
agree on
music.
that. And especially guys like you and me who listen to more music than the average person. At the end of the year, our Spotify usage outpaces the vast majority of people in the world. But but are you really truly saying to me that there should be no free tiers in music listening anywhere on the internet? Like, because now you're talking about YouTube, you're talking about Amazon Music, you're talking about the free tier on Spotify. You're probably talking about Pandora. I don't know much about Pandora these days, but I assume there's still a free ad supported tier there. There should be no ad supported music anywhere in the world like we had with radio back in the day.
I honestly like, yeah, I would be fine with that.
So yeah, I think that's kind of delusional. I not to attack you. I'm really not trying to attack you. Some
But
people
no,
just
it's
don't care
fine.
about music.
Well, then I guess if they don't care about music, I don't know what the value is of giving them a free tier anyways. Like, and then I don't think they need to listen to music if they don't care about music. I just look at the services like Tidal and Apple. I very much like their business model a lot more than I like Spotify's. I really do. I use Spotify though because their algorithm is better for me than the other services are. Their user interface is better than the other ones. And just because I have so many years of data that I've given Spotify that allows their algorithm to better predict what it is that I'm going to like. But, you know, the business models of Apple and Tidal, I think fits the type of music fan I am a lot better than Spotify. So I'm not all that sympathetic to people that just want to listen to free music. I'm really not. And like even and as far as the YouTube thing, like I know people do listen to music on YouTube, but I I just view that I don't know, for whatever reason, this is probably just my age, but I just view that very differently from what Spotify is. Like, because even if you have YouTube on your phone and you put a playlist on, if it's on an iPhone, the second you close out of that, it stops playing unless you pay for YouTube Premium. So then you have to pay on a tier in order to play YouTube in the background on your device.
But I think there's
So
a YouTube Music app, and I think there's a free tier on YouTube Music, but I don't know.
okay, maybe, but I don't know. I just don't think music should be free.
Well, and I think
Don't.
there should always be an ad supported option like radio, you know, and so
Yeah, but
even if they get
radio is different because those are things that are being promoted, and you're not able to sit there and just listen to a whole album on the radio. And people are
that's fair.
selectively choosing to just listen to an entire album on Spotify for free.
But they can insert ads every 4 songs just the same.
That's fine. I'm not. That's just not how I think music should be sold and consumed as a commodity. I just can't get on board with it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I agree with you for me personally because I pay for it, but
Mm-hmm.
all those Alexa devices out there get sold and you don't need a subscription necessarily to play a song from Amazon Music,
That's
which
fair.
probably comes out of the box.
But you cannot listen. You cannot just listen to an album for free through it, though.
No, you can listen to radio. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I haven't been a free user of Spotify in over 10 years now, probably 7, 8 years.
I mean,
So
I never have.
I don't even know what it's like.
Yeah, the second I could sign up for Spotify, I paid. I was on
I
the
think I
paid
did
tier.
too, actually.
Yeah.
Because I think you and I we'd heard about this thing and we were waiting for it to finally be released in the United States. And then
I mean,
it was like magic.
For us to have this conversation, I am not a normal music fan, and I recognize like what back in the pirating days when I was getting free music, if I found something I really loved, I went to Amazon and bought the MP3 album. Like
Me too.
I was buying the music that I liked, even though I could have had it for free. It was solely a choice of mine
I was
that I
still
was,
buying CDs. I was trialing with
or
piracy, and I
CDs.
was
Yeah.
getting it early with piracy, because for me, the real value of piracy in the early days was I can get this
Pre-releases.
2 or 3 months early. I'm going to listen to this obsessively, and then I'd pre-order it, usually
Yep.
on Amazon, actually. And then
Yep.
when the CD was released, I would pour over the liner notes, and I'd be in heaven. But I'd already knew the album up and down and left and right. That was the collecting days. But
Yeah.
all right, well,
I still wonder sometimes if like, if everybody was more like us, if that would have been a better like system. The whole like get music for free, but then buy it once you realize that you love it. Like I almost still think that that's a better model than the paying $10 or what is Spotify even today? Is it, are they up to 15 now or whatever
I don't
it
know,
is?
man. I buy the family plan so that I can have
Mine's just
separate
like on it.
accounts.
Mine
I
is
buy the
so
family
out of
plan
sight, out
because
of mind.
I need separate accounts for all the people in my family, because I don't want my algorithm ruined
Absolutely.
with Weird Al for my 12-year-old and hardcore rap and whatever 1980s new wave that my 14-year-old is listening to.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
all right, you had one last topic.
Yeah, this will just be real quick. I just wanted to say a thing about. Did you see the Matt Pinfield news
I did.
today? So just wanted to give a shout out for those of you guys who didn't hear. It came out today that Matt Pinfield suffered a stroke earlier this month, and it sounds like he's not doing great. Just based on some of the things I've seen people who know him say, it really sounds like he's in rough shape right now. I mean, for Craig and I, we grew up watching him host 120 Minutes, which was like the most essential thing you could watch on MTV for music fans like us. He broke so much music to me, introduced me to so much music. And,
hey, before you do that, explain 120 minutes, because it wasn't Headbangers Ball. 120 minutes was different.
So 120 Minutes was, I would say, like really made to be like the alternative show. It was 2 hours. It was Matt Pinfield, and they would primarily debut new songs. So if a band had a new video, they would debut it on 120 minutes. They would make album announcements, and they would play a lot of cutting edge artists that would not get played on MTV during the day, during peak peak viewing hours.
Do you remember anything that was broken for you on 120 minutes? Because I know the first time I ever heard Creep by Radiohead was on 120 minutes.
Helmet. I was introduced to Helmet on 120 minutes. I do the Evolution. Pearl Jam debuted that video. They held it back for Matt Pinfield to play it on 120 minutes. And that was their first video since Jeremy. That was a huge deal. That was really cool.
So there's one other one out there by Dinosaur Jr.
Yeah.
I became a Dinosaur Jr. fan because of Matt Pinfield in 120 minutes.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was always all over anything Dinosaur Jr. So, and so, it was just, he's such a important part of the formative part of my music fan experience. And so it was just really sad to see that news today. And I just wanted to send some good energy and positive vibes into the universe for him. I hope he's able to recover. And, I still would sometimes watch his, you could watch his show, his like daily radio show on YouTube, and I would still check it out every now and then. And he would still get really good interviews with bands. Like he is friends with every band. Like he's friends with them all, and he knows just a unbelievable depth of knowledge of music and producers, mixers. He knows guitar techs. Like he knows everybody in the industry. And so just wanted to send some good thoughts his way, and hope he has a full recovery.
I agree. I hope this is not the end of the story. I hope we're not eulogizing this guy.
Yeah.
Very important part of my upbringing with music too. These VJs from the early days of MTV, not actually, the second wave. We weren't there for the early days of MTV. We were second wavers.
Yeah.
But you know, seeing them continue to be relevant in music in this day and age is kind of heartening for me. And so, yeah, this one hit me hard too. The idea, thinking about a music world without Matt Pinfield kind of talking about it is just, I don't want to consider it yet.
No, definitely not. So,
all right. Well, we appreciate you guys coming and checking out the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast. The albumofrecord.com is where we host this as well. And I wrote some words there this week about the MP3 thing, the streaming thing.
it's a good read. It is. It's a very good read. People should check it out. You got visuals to go along with it. It's a good article.
Thanks very much. So please do the things that help us make this thing grow. Tell a friend, subscribe all the places, share it on your social media channels. We see it all. We love it all. We appreciate you. And we'll talk to you next time. It's been the Album of Record podcast.